What would be your approach to opening up Nicollet at Lake Street? What kind of a project should you envision going in that location? And we'll direct this to Ken Bradley.
Well, this is my favorite question. Because when I was a kid, my dad lived in 19th and 1st. I come from, my parents were divorced when I was a kid, and my dad lived in 19th and 1st. He also lived in the Wedge for a while. And I went to church at Bethlehem Stewart Presbyterian Church in Pleasant. And I remember when the Kmart was first built and driving down Nicollet Avenue, and my father getting to that point and saying, what kind of an idiot would build a road in the middle of, a building in the middle of this road? Someone should drive a bulldozer through the store. And that memory stuck in my head all of my life, and then I realized that 40 years later, it's the same attitude everyone has about it. I mean, we're all disappointed that there's a building in the middle of Nicollet, which is actually an example used and studied in universities across the world as horrible development. So I think it's the most exciting thing that could happen. I really do. And I think that what will happen when we reopen Nicollet and Lake Street, it's going to have an effect that impacts not just Nicollet and Lake, but beyond that. So one that happens, I think we're going to see some density in that corridor, but I want to see it bicycle pedestrian friendly. I want to see it integrated into the greenway so we have interconnection, so it's almost as though it's a super highway coming off of there. I think that we're going to see multi-use. We're going to have multifamily homes. We're going to have retail, restaurants, and other purposes. And I think that it really is probably the most exciting part of this entire ward is reopening that. So I'm pretty excited about it. And at the end of the day, I think, and I will tell you that I wasn't convinced of immediately, I'd love to see it, but I am now. I think a modern streetcar running down Nicollet Avenue is a pretty darn good idea. And I think that it will make that neighborhood even stronger and better. And I didn't come to that easily. There are some problems with it. It's not perfect. But I think that, we're not talking about the Rice-Aroni streetcar. We're talking about one that's pretty fast, pretty efficient. It's going to get people from point A to point B.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa Bender.
Thank you. This is one where I think we probably all agree that it's really important to get this right. But I am uniquely qualified, I think, to manage the conversation about what happens at this site. And part of why I'm running for city council, because we need to have a positive conversation about what happens at that site, or we'll end up with that Kmart store sitting there for another 30 years. So I would take an approach of starting with a big vision. We have a complicated set of stakeholders wanting to look at this site. There are 3 private landowners. There's the city, there's Metro Transit that's looking to improve transit on Nicollet Avenue, and then of course there's our community and our neighborhood associations. So we need to have a conversation about how we want that place to look and feel. I don't want to dictate that, but rather have a broad conversation about what are important goals for our community. Having talked to hundreds of you, I know that a lot of our goals have to do with maintaining a balanced transportation system, our commitment to social equity and environmental sustainability. One of the things that's going to be really important about that site is getting the design right. It's a huge site. So we need to make sure we don't forget about the ground floor and only focus on how tall the buildings are. We need to make sure those buildings are beautifully designed and they're designed to last. And we need to make sure that it's tied to the conversation about transit. There's a decision to be made about bus versus streetcar. There's never been a 9-mile streetcar built at once in the country. So we could get a bus faster, but a streetcar would potentially be another great option. And finally, one of the reasons our housing is so expensive is because we keep building housing with lots of parking. And one parking space costs $25,000 for one parking space. If we put a ton of parking at that site, we're going to limit the amount of affordability we can put in those units. And this isn't a part of the city where we should be providing affordable housing. So making sure that we are incorporating that into the whole decision, the whole conversation about what kind of development goes there is really an important priority for me.
Thank you. Kendall Killian.
Recently I saw a list, I think it was on MidCoast or something like that, and it had the top 10 worst urban planning decisions made in Twin Cities history. And can you believe it? This was not even on there. I think whoever wrote that should, I don't know, maybe their degree should be revoked. What's that? So, I mean, really this is about partnerships, right? Because this is a massive project that's going to involve the federal government with the 35W issues. It's going to involve the county, it's going to involve the Metropolitan Council, it's going to involve the state and the State Department of Transportation. And what we need to help really get this done is someone that really understands how to liaison between different governmental units. And as a government relations professional myself, and as someone who has earned endorsements in this campaign from Senator Jeff Hayden, who represents that area, from Metropolitan Council member Adam Dunnick, who's the vice president of the Midway Corridor Community Advisory Committee that's being put together. We're going to partner together and work together and find the solutions that work for everyone. But it really takes someone who understands how to leverage different governmental units and different entities together, and I know how to do that. Finally, I want to say one more thing about that space, and that is that when we first started having this conversation, or at least when I became aware of this conversation about 15 years ago, people used to say, tear down Kmart. And I'm actually very glad that we now say open up Nicollet, because that Kmart store is actually very dependent upon by a lot of sectors of our community. And as much as big box retail is not where I choose to shop, it is a place where a lot of folks in our community depend on buying cheap clothing and things in order to have food for their families and things like that. And so it's really kind of callous when people just say, tear down Kmart, get rid of that, let's put in, Trader Joe's or something. And that isn't, we have to maintain, the shopping spaces for people that depend on it.
Thank you. Meg Tuthill?
It's perfect to have me on this question. I was down at City Hall when we talked about when the city sold Nicollet Avenue to the private developer. So I've seen this from the beginning, and I want to see it through the end. The opening of Nicollet Avenue is not just that parcel of land. We've included about a 6 square block parcels so that we can look at the development in a broader sense than just that one piece of land. So that's really important to know. The other thing is that's really important about it is that we are talking with transit, the neighborhoods, and the Lake Street business people as well to see what their needs are. So we are bringing a number of people to the table. The former Sullivan's grocery store their lease has been taken over by Jerry's. If you have not been in the store, I recommend that you go in. It is absolutely fabulous. They have cleaned it up, the cleanest floors I've seen in a grocery store in years. They have really taken a look at their niche marketing for the folks in the community, and that's really important as well. Kmart would like to stay. They understand in order to stay that they need to have a smaller footprint because they do serve the community there. And part of the reason that they've done so well and been successful there is the fact that there is terrific bus routes along Lake Street for folks to use, and there's the Midtown Greenway. So we do have some transportation there, but as we look forward to getting the private owner to sell back the street to us, and that's the big negotiation. Once we get that done, that's when you bring everybody together, and that's what we've been working on in the city with staff and other council members and the other partners in the community for the last, I'd say we've been working on this about a year. So I would be thrilled to be there when it gets opened.
Thank you.